Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and today we have special guest Judy Egett Laufer. Judy writes under the name of J.E. Laufer, and she was born in Budapest, Hungary. Oh, how beautiful. She immigrated here with her parents and brother to North America as a young child, and she was raised in Montreal, Canada. She's an educator by trade, and Judy has spent more than 25 years in education. Her experience ranges from a decade in the classroom to curriculum development, adult education, and school administration. She is an award-winning author, community leader, and philanthropist. Her most recent young adult books, Choices 2018 and Hidden Pearl 2019, both won book awards. J.E. Laufer has written 5 picture books, gaining several book awards as well. These charming, fun-filled stories take place in the magical land of Gigglyville and have enchanted young children everywhere. All right, welcome to the show, Judy.
Thanks, Sheila. Nice to join you.
Yes, and you know, I actually wrote a book as well. I don't know what's happened with my hair, but anyway, it's like sticking up because the air event is blowing on me. So anyway, so that could be part of the next children's story.
There you go. Yeah, that's true.
That's very true. So this show is based on my best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. So I'd like to start off sharing maybe if you have a situation in your business or your personal life that you had to overcome, a tough situation, and how you got back on track.
So the first book I wrote was actually after my dad passed away. Mm-hmm. And that was probably pretty traumatic for our whole family. He was almost 80 years old, which nowadays is not that old. Yeah. And I had a young niece who was having a very difficult time with the grieving process. And having worked in education, a lot of children around the kindergarten age have somebody who's passed away, an uncle, an aunt, whatever. And now, of course, with all of the world events, or certainly the virus, we see more of that. And dealing with death is a difficult situation, grieving. So what I did was write a book. So the way I dealt with it is I wrote a book and discovered that there was a lot of people that could use the healing process of the book. Most of the books are books that are about conversation. So it's a platform for discussion. Mm-hmm. And the book really is the memories that you have, that even though the person's gone, the memories live on. And that was very comforting to me. Mm-hmm. And I think comforting to many to know that, physically they're gone, but in your heart, they're always there.
Yes, that's very true. And it is one of those situations that this year we've had to hear about, witness, and see so much death in our world, more than we're accustomed to, and that maybe our young children end up walking in the room and seeing things they don't need to see or hear about so much. And in a way, it's important to discuss these things. I always felt with my 6 children, I have 3 that are mine and 3 that I adopted, that even when we lost a pet, it was part of the process. Like, our pets were blessing us as parents with the gift of helping our children learn about the grieving process and how to get through that as a family. And, our pets are like our family in many cases.
Absolutely.
So that really, I think, helped in our family. And we didn't have a lot of books out there that even talked about the topic, especially for younger children at all.
And that's really why I wrote it, because being a kindergarten teacher, I would mm-hmm. look for books for children who'd come to school, and most of the books were about a pet dying or mm-hmm. the seasons changing, more abstract. And right. For many children, that's not appropriate. They want to know, they want to hear the story about a person.
Yes, and as parents, how we share, how we grieve or don't talk about it, it really sets the tone for later in life for our children when they're grown, and how they actually cope with grief and get through their own grieving process in life, because we are going to lose people. If we live long enough, we're going to lose a lot of people over time.
Absolutely.
That's just the way it is. And I know for my family, like I said, 6 children, we lost my youngest son last December, and he was just 22. He had a heart condition since 5th grade. And it was, we did ablation, we did treatments. They said he was fine, but you never know. Went to sleep at grandma's, he didn't wake up.
Wow.
So he was very peacefully. But it really was us having to, as a family, go through that grieving process with the other kids. And some of them moved back home. You know, they took time off of school. They were just starting college and took a break. And, you know, it's one of those things that you hope you never have to face, but it's so helpful to have resources. And I share a lot of resources out there for people that may need help when they're going through something like that. So I love that you have this book, especially for our younger children out there that may have lost a loved one.
And, you know, often I recommend that you read a story like that before anything's happened. And so that you're not emotional with it. And it's just a story of this story happens to be about a little girl whose grandfather died. And it was written from a niece. So you can talk to your child or a child about, you know, how did this little girl feel and what happened to her and what happened to her family. And then when something does happen in your family, which inevitably everyone will have that, then you've already discussed it once, and the child can use it almost as something that they can go back to time and time again.
Yes, that's so important. That's beautiful. And I'd love to hear about some of your other books. You have quite a few.
I do. So I probably should share with you that the series is, there's a book series, and it's from the magical land of Gigglyville, as you mentioned before. And Gigglyville is this kind of magical, wonderful place that pretty much is utopia. And you can have all sorts of issues there that happen in real life, but we find kind of a positive way to deal with it. So again, all of the books are social emotional issues for young children. And the idea is that we find a positive way to deal with those emotions. So the second book I wrote was called Last Night I Had Laufer. And it's an anti-nightmare book for young children. So again, nightmares are something that happen quite often, especially with our preschoolers. And, you know, something that people have a difficult time dealing with. And so I did a little bit of research, and some of the research suggested that children have nightmares because they might have seen or heard something before they went to bed, and that kind of triggered it. So I thought if that's true, the opposite should be true. And let's provide a funny, happy, silly story for them to read, and hopefully that's what they'll dream about, and they'll wake up with a laughtmare. And the funny thing is, it has happened, and I've had parents write to me and tell me that their children have woken up with a laughtmare. The word is kind of created, but it's a great word for kids to use. You know, they wake up happy, and their parents say to them, "Gee, what's going on? Why are you giggling, or what's going on?" And they can say, "Well, I had a laughtmare," and then everybody can kind of laugh about it.
I love.
Yeah, so that was kind of the next book, and then the other, you know, another thing that's very important for that young age group is birthdays. So the next book I wrote was What's Your Birthday Wish? And What's Your Birthday Wish is really about helping the world. So it's about changing the world using that once a year powerful wish, your birthday wish, and doing something that'll help the bigger picture, so help everyone. So instead of wishing for toys or clothes or all the things that you typically wish for, in the book, the characters wish for things like, I wish I can get rid of all the anger in the world, or I wish everybody would have a home, or I wish we could get rid of all the illness that's in the world. So perfect for COVID, right? I mean, that's, you know, what a great wish that would be, is that we could, you know, get COVID out of the world. But again, the book, that one, and all of them are meant to be a platform for discussion. So then you can have a discussion with your child thinking, well, what would your birthday wish be? How could you do something that would be significant in the world? So that was what's your birthday wish? And then I wrote a book. My newest book actually is called The Very Unhappy Visitor. The Very Unhappy Visitor is about finding your own happiness. You own your own happiness. So instead of blaming others when things go wrong, you own that. It's up to you to find what makes you happy and do that. And we have a new character that comes out in that book, and the character's name is Shrilly. And Shrilly is very unhappy, and even though she goes to the happiest place in the world, which is Gigglyville, she just sees everything in a negative way. And the characters start to, talk to her about perhaps it's you, perhaps you're really, that's not what's going on, perhaps you're just seeing it that way. So at the end of the story, she gets a magic pair of glasses. And with her magic pair of glasses, she gets to see what the world was really like, what she's been missing this whole time with her negative attitude. And, the end of the story is basically, it's up to you. The choice is yours. Do you choose to look at things in a positive way, or do you choose to look at things in a negative way? Do you blame others for your unhappiness, or will you take responsibility? Again, a great topic to address with children. Even young children could really understand that from a young age, when the children go to school and they'll say something like, well, I didn't bring this book or this paper or whatever, and it's my mother's fault because she was supposed to put it in my backpack when she didn't. So again, it's, well, what about your responsibility? What was your responsibility in this? It's your homework. Shouldn't you have put it in your book or your coloring page or your special toy or, the whole cleanup thing when children don't put their toys away. And then they blame somebody else because they can't find it. Someone took my whatever, and had they put it away, they would know where it was. So, and then the other books that I wrote were for young adults. So the two books that I wrote come from my own history. My parents were Holocaust survivors, and actually my in-laws are also Holocaust survivors. So the first book is called Choices, and Choices is the story of my parents or my family that left Hungary during the Hungarian Revolution. So they lived through the Holocaust, and they lost a lot of family during the Holocaust, but they did survive. And they survived to find out that there was another big world situation that they now had to face. And so it's an escape story. It's their escape story of how they escaped communist Hungary, which was under Russian rule. Again, kind of very, very current in terms of how Russia has affected the United States and how Russia has now built up more power in the world. So, and it's a great immigration refugee story. Yeah, so that, and then the other book is called Hidden Pearl. And Hidden Pearl is the story of my mother-in-law, who was a hidden child during the war. So we know lots of things about the Holocaust in terms of there's a lot of stories about the concentration camps and some of those things, but there isn't a lot of stories about the hidden children in terms of some of the children. For her, for instance, she was hidden in plain sight. So she looked Aryan, and they didn't know she was Jewish. And at 10 years old, she was placed with a Christian family who didn't know she was Jewish because they would have had to turn her in for their own safety. Right. So, yeah, so she lived under a different identity at 10 years old. Can you imagine 10 years old having to have a different identity and kind of keeping up that role? So, yeah, that was, so that's The Hidden Pearl. And again, both books are for young adults. The two historical are for young adults. And I purposely wanted to have something that young adults could have a taste of history, that they would look at something, it was a true story, historical time, but it's not a very long book. So it appeals to that younger audience. who are perhaps not big readers, but want to have a real story.
Nice. Wow, that's incredible.
So I gave you a lot of information in a short amount of time.
Yes, that's so incredible. I mean, wow, what a journey for your family, and a testament to you writing about it and sharing about it has really made that a part of healing and helping other people now. That's incredible. And I think, having my own young adults at my house, and I actually was a teacher for quite a few years also. I was a Waldorf teacher, so it's a little different, but similar. And so the thing with that was that all our children now and all these kids I'm connected to still, I see them caring so much more about history. Not that they didn't care at all, but the ones that really never bothered with history, now they want to know, they want to understand, they want to see everything, because we're going through such a time as our own living history right now. And they're like, this really matters. I need to study this. I need to see what this is all about. And so our leaders of the future, our young adults today, are really changed by this tough situation with the pandemic and everything else, social unrest, all these things going on, that they're actually caring so much more because they see how it affects our whole world. And so I think that in a way, this tough situation is going to bless the future generations in a big way. It's like a redirect.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Yes.
When I've gone out to schools, I do some speaking at schools and book clubs and that kind of thing. And I'm fascinated by the questions of the young students. I've gone to middle schools, and they love learning about the Holocaust, very fascinated by the Holocaust, actually. And many of them knew nothing about the Hungarian Revolution, which was overshadowed by the Holocaust, because that was only 10 years prior. But fascinated by how people lived and what happened to them, and what life was like at that time or in that country.
Yes, and I know for myself, as a little girl growing up, I stayed with grandparents, and one set of grandparents that I stayed with, my grandmother had all these older friends that were, I think, 70 to 80, somewhere in that age range. They all ran businesses, and they all came from somewhere else, because we're in Los Angeles in the foothills. And so these ladies would have me there, and I'm the only little girl there, 5 years old, and I hear these incredible real life stories. One was in a concentration camp and lost her relatives, and she was the only one that got out, with somebody else or something that took her in. And all these incredible stories of people coming from different countries, what they went through. So I had the gift of living history. And so when I went to school, I actually cared a lot more, because I had faces and emotions. I saw real tears in front of me, and I was carried with their stories of these people I knew and loved. And so it really made a difference. And I hope that somehow the generations that are still living can share their stories still today, because it's so important to hear the living history as well, and to have great books like your books, where you're sharing real life situations and how people got through interesting times, because this is the way that we can learn and hopefully prevent these things. I mean, my grandmother had lived through the Spanish, the flu, and Great Depression, and she would tell me all these warnings and and I was like, oh, come on. No way. We're smarter than that now. We wash our hands without germs. We're scientifically advanced. We have computers. We don't have to worry. And I was like, oh, darn, Grandma was right.
Yeah.
So even though we think there's no way these things could happen, if you look globally at what's happening in our world, even today, some of these things are still happening. And
I often say when I'm out, I'll say something like, you can't make this stuff up. You cannot make, the real life stories, you can't make it up.
Exactly. And the best, the living history stories are really the best, because
they're powerful.
They are, and so helpful. And also just sharing about, like those books for the children about real life situations they're going to have to come in contact with in one form or another, or just they see it on the news. It's so helpful. I think it avoids the nightmares and they get more laugh mirrors because
well, we hope so.
yes, because they have an awareness, like, to hide the truth about everything that's going on, or hide the truth about even money or money issues at home or whatever. Families tend to do that, and then the kids grow up and they have no concept of how to function with real life reality that's happening every day because of that. And so in a way, when you share it with children at a young age, it just makes it so much easier. And
it provides that platform for discussion. If you're discussing things all the way through, then it's easy to discuss other things as well. It's that connection to discussing, to, having those conversations that you're talking about that a lot of families aren't having, and they don't even know how to start them. When you haven't had them, how do you start one?
Mm-hmm. And I think that generationally, I think this generation, these last few generations are a little bit like, each generation is a little more open. So I think back to like those grandparents, they talked openly in that group, but really it wasn't something they would tell a child. I just happened to be there and I was to be seen and not heard.
Right. Yeah.
And I just was listening. So that's such a difference, where they didn't bring things up that, abuse in the home, situations going on that need to be expressed and talked about. It just didn't happen. And I think they didn't have the mental health help that they have today, or guidance either. And this year, as a teacher, I'm wondering what advice you have for parents maybe listening in who have kids now. Some of the schools are closing again. Some states in the US and in Canada are back on lockdown already. So do you have any advice or guidelines maybe that could help parents listening in?
Yes, I think absolutely. It's got to be tough on families. I think often, I have a 28-year-old right now, but, God bless those parents that have young children and have to deal with them 24/7 and have to find activities. And it's really difficult. But I think, again, using a book, whether it's my book or another book, but using a book and reading with your children, reading with them and then talking to them, opening up those lines of communication and opening up those lines of communicating about feelings, because often that's the most difficult. Is often a child, especially a young child, if you're talking about the preschoolers, they often can't even identify what they're feeling. They're frustrated, they're tired, they're, all of the same things that adults are feeling, but they can't even put a label on it. So helping them to do that often helps, or sharing with them that you as adults feel that same kind of frustration, and instead of pretending that everything's okay, it's often better to address the topic with a child. So, have them share with you. Let them, the other part I often say is we need to listen to our kids. Instead of telling them what they should do or where they should go or what they should read, listen to them. Listen to what are they feeling? What are their needs? Why are they feeling upset? And, it's sometimes something they can't do about it. They just maybe need to cry their way through it for that, that moment. That's okay too. I often see that there's a lot of parents who always want to have the perfect situation for their children. Nobody wants their children to be pained in any way. And so we spend so much time worrying about why our kids are unhappy. The unhappy thing, which in a way I addressed a little bit with the unhappy visitor. The idea that sometimes it's okay if you're not 100% happy. No one's 100% happy all the time. And we can let kids deal, sometimes allowing them to figure out how to get out of a mood or figure out what it is that's troubling them is really a great process for them, a great learning process. So, my advice would be really to listen to your children, talk to your children, read to your children. The interaction is especially important now. You want to know what's going on with them. Interestingly enough, when I wrote the book Choices, one of the things that I thought of was addressing the whole issue of teenage suicide through using that book. Often children are upset because they get a bad grade in school, or they break up with their boyfriend or girlfriend, and their world has come to an end. You know, the world they're done. Nothing worse could be happening. Well, when they read a story about a family who really terrible things happened, people were killed, it was really a low point in their lives, and yet they chose life. They didn't choose to give up. They figured out how to move on. And again, providing that platform for discussion, having a story like that, reading the story, both parents and child or teenager or whatever, and then being able to say, well, what did you think? And, how do you think that family felt? And what would you have felt like? And do you think you would have had the courage to do that? And, those kinds of things I think are really, really helpful. That opening up my communication, I can't stress that enough.
Yes, that is so important. And one thing I do share on my shows when we talk about suicide, mental health issues, those kind of things, is I always share about 211. And that's, I don't know if you've heard of it or not. It's a survey I do know. So about 60% of the people I've surveyed have no clue what it is. And so 211 is in the United States as well as in Canada. If you Google 211 or dial it, and if you put in 211 in your state or province, you're going to get a bunch of resources for your area. Mental health, help, getting food to the table. If you need food, food banks right now, people that have never had to ask for anything, if they're both out of work or whoever's home is out of work, they're going to have to look for these resources, and not knowing the resources is the biggest problem. So 211 connects you to everything, health services, your insurance is out. So this is an important thing. If your kids or somebody you know and love seems more depressed than they should be, just sharing with your work group, friends group, maybe a sports club, wherever you go, so that people know. A lot of times adults even, don't ask for help when they need it, but if they're given a resource, they'll be able to at least know how to get more help. Maybe they don't want to share it with everyone. So it's a good thing to share as much as possible. It's completely free.
Yeah, that's great. I never heard of 211. No.
Yes. So
that's great.
I share that almost every show, because I think this year more than ever, people just need to know that. And also regarding schools, I know in the U.S., many of the public schools have special grants for like school lunch programs, that even though the schools may be shutting down or are shut down already, have been, people can drive up and get the lunch program. So at least they're able to get some meals to the kids that maybe they're struggling with, and that helps. And it's like a drive. We're going out somewhere. Let's go.
Sure, it's an activity.
It's an activity. And little activities, reading lots of books makes all the difference. I know my kids and I were readers. We had a reading time every day for an hour at least at night. And that was just something, we had a routine and a ritual where we would have our reading time, and then we'd have our share time, our gratitude time. And so if you set up some type of a ritual and a routine, that will help get the kids to bed, help keep the conversations open. And then really, if you can still access books from the libraries, and yes, and that's also important. If you really love a book, call the library and ask that it be made available at the local library for other people who may not be able to buy books right now. So,
right. No, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So really, everybody just putting in as much as they can to help each other, connecting, getting the kids on Zoom calls and connection that way. If they're back on lockdowns, there's so many different ways to do this. So yes, that's really important. I love all you're doing, Judy, and I really I appreciate you being a guest on the show. I think it's going to help a lot of people. I'd love for you to share how people can get a hold of your books and connect with you more.
Okay, so I have a website. It's www.littleeggpublishing.com. And on there, there's a link to my Facebook page, my Instagram page, and also if people want to send me a note, you can email. The website has all the books on it. There's a description of the books. The young adult book, the first one, Choices, there's actually a video trailer on there that I think a lot of people will really like. It gives you a good insight into the story, a little snippet into what had gone on in 1956 in Hungary. Wow. Yeah, that's probably the best way. We also do a donation program, which I'm really proud of. So part of the philanthropy part is that I love to give back, and I've been involved with two main national groups, and that is one is called the Pajama Program, and they do a fabulous program where they give books and pajamas to kids who are in shelters or in any other vulnerable situation. And the other group is called Kids Need to Read, and they help underserved schools and libraries in underserved areas, and they do a fabulous job of getting books to those kids. So I always have sponsors who sponsors books to those places, and we do as well. And local libraries, I often will donate to local libraries. I think that, I love the libraries. I think they're fabulous. So Little Egg Publishing is the publishing company. And just kind of a fun fact, my middle name, Egett, when I was growing up, they used to call me Little Egg. So when I thought of a publishing company for children, I thought, oh, that sounds fun. So that's where Little Egg Publishing comes from.
I love that. That's adorable. Yes, so that's great, and we will look forward to hearing more about more books. I'm sure you're producing more books as
I am.
So you're definitely welcome to come back and share about any new books when they're available. And
okay.
Check out your books, and thank you again for being a guest on the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right, stay tuned, everyone. We'll be back after these messages. Okay. If you are just tuning in, this is the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and you are tuned in to NBC's KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. And now we are going to have a chapter, a little portion of a chapter read out loud to you, and this is the chapter on parenting. We talked a lot about different moms and entrepreneurs, working moms, stay-at-home moms, and the debate. And I believe, and this is just my thing, moms and dads, your children are yours, and you are the best possible parents for them. So be amazing, incredible, authentic you, and do your best. Live your best life, and your children will follow suit. That is my advice and my strongest belief. And now I'd like you to take a listen. So before we get started, remember, you can get a copy of my latest bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. It is now available on Audible, Amazon, Kindle, and also, if you grab a copy from the website, www.sheilamac.com, you can also download a free mini course, Introduction to the Boots Formula, to help you get started. All right, take a listen. Chapter 7. You'll Always Be My Baby, Parenting Teenage and Adult Children. Here are some tips for parenting teenagers that I picked up while raising 6 of my own. Step 1. Learn your teenager's temperament. Start by learning what your teenager's temperament is. It may be different from when they were a child, but one of the easiest ways to figure this out is to think back to those magical preschool days. My first son was always interested in figuring out how his toys worked. He would break them into pieces just to see if he could put them back together again. He later became a programmer and chess player.
His temperament requires contemplation. He thinks in mathematical equations, and small talk was never his thing. So to reach him, it was always best to present things using logic and science instead of feelings and emotions. Another one of my sons has a very different temperament. He loves to be around people. I always referred to him as my hugger, and he was born laughing. He has always had a very low-key, laid-back personality. He's never liked to be rushed, and as a kid, he complained when I put him in too many after-school activities. He just wanted to go play at the park and have fun. He also has a photographic memory and is very smart. When he chooses to apply himself in anything, he gets the job done, and nothing can stop him. I've learned that with his temperament, he's happiest choosing how he wants to best apply or not apply his talents. My daughter is amazing and always organized, which she doesn't get from me. She has always naturally loved structure, and if you give her a calendar or a list of things to do, she's happy. To this day, she loves order and creates her work and school schedule to ensure she is reaching her desired outcomes. When she was a young child or teen, I would write out a list and we would discuss goals together. As long as it made sense and she agreed with the schedule, she got everything accomplished. You can also check your teenager's love language, as we covered in Chapter 3 on relationships, or use other individualized assessments. This will teach you how to express yourself as a parent so you can actually reach them, and it will show you how to talk to them and how to hear what they're saying. Step 2. Determine how your teen responds to the world. After you understand her temperament, determine how your child responds to the world. Although this section speaks of dealing with a teen, it relates to older and younger children's personalities as well. During the teen years, a child is going through a lot of transitions, both physically with hormones as well as emotionally. They are experiencing the growing pains of first loves and learning how to fit in with peers in school, the pressures of school and getting good grades, and the reality of preparing to leave home to go off to college or start a career. It's a scary time of rapid growth as a child begins to develop their identity and autonomy. With that being said, how your child reacted when younger is going to be very different during these teen years. How does your child respond when they are happy, when overwhelmed, when things don't go right, and they get bad news or are dealing with drama at school? Your teenager may act out or respond with anger or seclude themselves in their room. The question to be aware of is, at what point is their response something to be concerned about? If you start to feel uncertain about where your child is headed, it may be helpful to have a pre-discussion about consequences. Creating a family meeting, even at this stage and age, can make a huge difference. It may even be necessary to help them reboot, which we'll talk about in just a moment in Step 4. Step 3. Discover how your teenager learns best. Third, discover how they learn best. We all learn differently. Some people do well listening in class and can remember just about everything they hear. Others have verbal processing issues and need to read to get their best results. There are those who are often seen taking voracious notes. They tend to be more kinesthetic in nature, and the feeling of the act of writing itself helps their minds remember more about the topic. Some must repeat or verbally speak something to memorize it deeply. Because I was both a Montessori and Waldorf teacher over the years, I got to study how to reach children using many different modalities. It helped me to understand how to reach my own teens better, as well as how to learn and continue to educate myself. When you determine the strongest way to support your teenagers' learning, you can be sure that what you're saying or writing sticks. Step 4. Teach your children the BOOTS formula. The last step is to teach your children the BOOTS formula so they can use it through their own inevitable ups and downs. Having smaller rock-bottom moments when they're younger helps your children learn to move through them and hopefully helps prevent hitting too many more rock bottoms as they grow into adulthood. When you share some of the small steps you take while going through a tough situation or even a rock bottom, you are teaching your children to be prepared and successful adults. We all have our waves in life, and the best thing we can do as parents is give our children the tools to be able to handle any situation that may show up. Ask your child who they are being during their struggles at school or elsewhere, and how they need to show up in order to modify the situation. Help them assess their orientation. Where are they with their homework assignments, for example, and where do they need to be to get the grades they want? Help them to think through the order of operations, a nice way to introduce a higher math concept early on. What would be the best first step to take? Once they've taken that first action, what is the next logical step? Then remind your teen about how their thinking can help them with their life. What mindset will best help them in this situation? Finally, help them to learn how to set goals and step up and take action toward their own desired outcomes. It may be that they want to have friends over for a party. Together, you could write out a few steps and make an agreement that if they do these action steps, you'll let them have their party. I have a different relationship with each of my children because I know what their temperament is. I know how they respond. I know how they learn. And I know they have the tools they need to think and plan through difficult life situations. Where one may have needed more space as a teenager, another needed firmer boundaries, and yet another needed additional guidance because they were still an immature young adult. With these steps established, you and your teenagers will have better communication. When they have an issue, they will be less likely to hide it. They can come to you before it gets really bad. They'll feel safe in your relationship, so they can tell you the shift that's happening in their life before they hit rock bottom. Then you can talk through it. Help them reboot if necessary, and they'll be a lot more open to your parenting. Know them and know their friends. One of the most important things Tony Robbins says is, we're the direct reflection of our peer group. If we see our kids get into the wrong peer group, the best thing to do is make some kind of a shift. That may mean moving, sending them to a different school, or having them go to a summer program. Maybe you can't afford to move or pay for pricey summer camps. That's okay. It just needs to be enough of a shift to shake up their perspective. Connect them with Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, community service, or an after-school activity they love, maybe a dance class, sports team, or arts program. It may mean getting them involved in some different classes to occupy their time and connect them with a more solid group. That way, your teenager is connecting with kids who are actually doing things your child wants to do anyway. It's not taking them out of their social life, but taking them out of a group that may be going down the wrong road. Then they can see that they don't have to do what everybody else is doing, which may be the wrong choice. Instead, the people around them will be applying themselves and working toward finding their talents. As important as a peer group is for a teen, or even for adults, it all boils down to personal responsibility. The moment a teen or parent stops blaming the others and focuses on new solutions is the moment a person is truly free. It seems hard to do, yet as a parent, modeling this type of responsibility can actually be the best training tool. If you have a teen at home, it may be helpful to point out your own teen or young adult experience. You may want to share how, when you were a young adult, once you were able to own your role in the situation, the problems disappeared and the solutions appeared. Once a teen applies this concept, it is so empowering, and they can use it as a tool for future difficult situations in college or in the business world. Parenting adult children. My children are all legally adults now, but I am always going to be their mom, and sometimes I still want to parent them. As we've discussed, there's a transition from child to teen, teen to young adult, and from young adult to fully fledged adult. Your relationship with your children will reinvent itself over the years. The responsibility shifts, the dialogue changes, you talk about things more openly or create stronger boundaries around the subjects you don't want to talk about. You're still a parent, but you shift to an advisor or friend role, someone they can come to and confide in about what's going on in their lives. You become a guide instead of someone who tells them what to do. You're not going to agree with everything your adult children do, and that's okay. Not everybody agrees with what I do. We all have our own decisions to make, but what if they keep making what you consider stupid choices, even as adults? Sometimes you just have to have the attitude of, I'm not going to say anything. I don't agree with this particular decision, but I love this person. Or even acknowledge, I don't agree with this, but if you're going to do it anyway, that's your choice. You agree to disagree. You choose your battles. But sometimes a boundary is crossed, and you as a family have to decide how to deal with that in the most loving way possible. You'll always love your children, but they don't live under your roof. So you can decide how you want them in your life. This may sound harsh, but it's real, and your grown children will appreciate receiving honesty with love over having to lie to your face about how they are living their lives. Some families choose not to discuss certain things openly, and others share just about everything. Each family unit has to decide on their own limits. I've heard of parents disowning their grown children over who they choose to date, or something as simple as a young adult changing their hair color or getting a piercing or tattoo. While that may not have been a parent's goal or ideal for their child, if you think back to your own teen or young adult years, there were always ways of expressing yourself, and those generational expressions change over time. Don't throw your adult baby out with the bathwater of the times. They are now adults and may decide to make changes later. Most will settle into their own less extremes once they test the boundaries and limits and are ready to settle down and get serious about careers or starting their own families. As much as possible, see where you can meet in the middle as adults. You're going to love your children no matter what, and you'll like the good parts about them. You don't have to like the parts that don't align with your values or your vision for them. That's their life. They own it now. A safe space. Just like with teenagers, if you honor who your adult children are and who they're showing up as, even though you might not agree with a large portion of what they're doing at the moment, it makes you a safe place for them to come to. But if you treat an adult like a child, you are most likely to be met with dishonesty, distance, pushback, and resentment. If every time you get together, you go in circles about a lifestyle choice because you don't like their job or boyfriend or girlfriend, they're not going to want to come over and visit or share real things with you. Is it worth doing that to your relationship? Don't waste your constantly shrinking precious time on things you can't change. How many people on this planet have to go home to their family on Thanksgiving or Christmas and think, ugh, this is hell. I don't want to go because these people are going to throw all their opinions on me, and I don't want to hear any of it. The holidays become a painful obligation. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a painful obligation. Instead, try to focus on all the good, the things you align on, the moments spent laughing and having fun, talking about your shared history, and making new memories. Do whatever makes you all happy this year, during this season of your life. It doesn't have to be what you've always done, where everybody gets the hell out as fast as they can because they don't want to be there. For example, as a family, we decided to celebrate our holidays differently. We have our own traditions, and my kids bring their significant others and children into the mix. One year, after spending a small fortune and 3 long days preparing the Thanksgiving meal and doing all the decorations, while running a business and taking care of elder family members, Everybody showed up having already eaten 1 or 2 meals at other houses they'd had to stop by on the way to my house. They were too stuffed to eat all the food I had so carefully cooked. That day, I announced that for future Thanksgivings, I was going to gift myself a trip to a wellness spa for a few days over the course of my birthday. I would rather spend that time and money on wellness, and we could plan to do a healthy, fun family activity that focused less on food and more on connection. One time we toured Catalina Island. Another time we rented bikes and rode them on Venice Beach. Sometimes we have a slumber party at my house with pillow fights, like when they were kids. Now my adult children come over and visit because they actually want to. As an adult with adult children, I get to be a kid again and play with them and have fun. We're building magic memories, and that's what they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. Strike a balance. No matter how old your children are, it's important to strike a balance in how much help you give them. As young children, we all need a lot of help figuring out the world around us. As we get older, we need less help learning to walk and talk, read and write, ride our bikes, or throw a ball, and more help navigating the complicated world of adults. Whether your children are teenagers or adults, it's necessary to adjust your level of involvement in order to maintain that balance. Don't overhelp. When you overhelp, giving your children too much and not asking that they take any personal responsibility, they may start to believe that they can't do anything for themselves. They've never had to prove themselves and use their talents to produce something. They haven't had to become a functioning adult. When I was a teacher, there were always those parents who did their children's class projects for them. It was pretty clear when the 8-year-old walked in with a working rocket ship model that he didn't make it himself. But the kid who came in with this funny-looking project that they put their heart and soul into deserved an A because I could see they did it themselves. There's a treatment program called Failure to Launch for adult children who have never left home. For whatever reason, they are unable to gain the independence they need to live their own lives. These parents pay thousands of dollars to get their child the help they need in order to grow up. That's a lot of money. It's far more affordable to do something that makes a bigger difference when they're younger. As you watch your child and think, damn, that's not what I'd do, there's this inclination to say, let me help you. But if you're able to step back and give them space while still saying, I'm your parent and I'm always here for you, if you need something, I'm going to show up. If something happens, you've always got a place. But I want you to fly. I want you to make those choices. It helps them develop confidence. A young adult grows by figuring out how to get a job, make their own money, and have some responsibilities. You'll have a much healthier, happier kid that way than if you give them everything and they never get to learn the responsibility of becoming an adult. After she came back from the Tony Robbins tour, my daughter got a job managing a Starbucks while she went to school. One day she came over and said, "See that red car over there? I bought it." She was so proud, and I'm proud of her too. She makes the payments and takes care of the maintenance on the car. She's able to appreciate the car more than she would have if I had bought it for her. And it's beautiful to see the self-confidence that came from figuring it out herself. But don't underhelp either. Over time, you and your children will get to a really solid place where they start having more self-respect and self-confidence, and you can step back from helping more and more. But you don't want to step back too far. You don't want to underhelp. You want to be there as a safety net to a certain extent. Your children should know that if they get sick or have an emergency, they have their parents to turn to for support. You're letting go of the apron strings with lots of love and logic. This concept works like the honor system. You give them a little bit of freedom, and if they step too far and fall, you're going to pull back. For example, if you leave them home alone and they have a party, Your child is going to have to re-earn your trust, and they certainly won't be able to stay home alone again for a while. You know your unique individual child and what they can handle better than anyone, but you'll need to have open and honest conversations with them as well. Ask them, how much do you think you can handle? And then trust your gut. It's better to give freedoms a little bit at a time and let your child earn the next step. So you may want to suggest a trial basis for so many weeks or months before going on. You can always pull back if necessary and eventually let them earn it again. Ask your child, what are you showing me? That you can be responsible or can't? Having an honest, open discussion will help this young adult be more receptive than talking down to them. Finally, keep any teachers and other adult family members in the discussion so that you are all working together on the same honest page. You are somebody's child too. So far, we've talked about your relationship as a parent to a child, but it's important to remember that you are also somebody's child. What is your relationship like with your parents? As an adult child yourself, you play an important role in the relationship you have with your parents, and you play an important role in changing that relationship as well. At some point, depending on your age, that time may have been relatively recent or farther in the past. You, too, wanted to grow up, have your own space, and become independent. You had to navigate, or are still navigating, how to be both your parents' child, no matter how old you are, you'll always be their kid, and an adult. We do a dance with our parents and our children just from the other side. They tend to fall into the pattern of parenting, and we may regress into acting like children. Have you ever caught yourself rolling your eyes? You, a grown-up adult? As you said, "Okay, Mom." You would never act that way with other adults, but it's normal to fall back into these familiar roles of parent and child. Just as you'll always be their child, your parents will always be your parents. But as an adult, you can move toward having a friendship with them too. You can start to see your parents for who they are, not just providers, but people. You can build a bond on an adult level, which is so much deeper and better because you're changing those roles. You may feel guilty when your parents accuse you of not calling or visiting enough, or you may feel they are still somehow controlling and running your life. You may feel smothered by their constant intrusions and over-involvement in your adult life, but none of these is the real problem. You don't have a mom who won't let you go or a mom who makes you feel guilty. The real issue is that you have a personal character problem. You need to develop your identity and autonomy and learn how to set boundaries. So how can you change that relationship? By changing the steps in the dance. Remember when you used to try on your mom's heels as a child? Well, it's time to step into her shoes again. Try to consider your mom's perspective. You were once her baby. She was devoted to taking care of you for your entire life, and now she feels like you're pushing her away. You left home, and she felt alone. She may feel like she's losing an important part of her identity or going through empty nest syndrome. One of my friends described it as, "I just got fired as a mom." And that was a portion of Chapter 10 in my bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom and back into action in any situation. Grab a copy on Amazon, Audible, or Kindle, or you may get it at my website, www.sheilamac.com, and there you will also find a free Introduction to the Boots Formula course just for you. Thank you again for tuning in. This is Sheila Mac, your host of The Sheila Mac Show, and I look forward to talking with you again on your morning commute.
Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mac's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. So if life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with bootstraps and bra straps. Get your copy at www.sheilamac.com.